Good morning, everybody, and a happy Tuesday morning to you. This has got to be one of the longest videos I've ever done because I'm still playing catch up. There's so much that between the royal family and all the Harry Meghan stuff, including the podcast and even more, and I'm still trying to catch up. So it's super long. Just stick with me. Let's jump in and cover it all, shall we? Let's go. We're going to start off with the Duke of Edinburgh, who is the honorary air commander. He visited the Royal Air Force Waddington in Lincoln to present a new standard to 51 squadrons. Let's move on now to King Charles, who attended a water and climate reception in support of WaterAid UK. This took place last week at Buckingham Palace. Some of the campaigners from WaterAid that were present were retired Paralympian swimmer Ellie Simmonds, Malawian politician Abida Mia, fashion designer Sandra Rhodes, fitness coach Joe Wicks, and television presenter Vicky Hope. Now, we know that Charles has been campaigning about climate change throughout most of his life. FYI, Charles was the president of WaterAid from 1991 until 2024. He then announced his patronage of the charity, and they promote climate change through water. And they work alongside communities in 22 countries to help secure decent toilets, good hygiene, and a reliable supply of clean water for everybody. I think that's just wonderful. Still sticking with King Charles, he met the Governor General of St. Lucia, Errol Charles, during an audience, and he invested him with the insignia of the Knight Grand Cross of the Most Distinguished Order of Michael and St. George. King Charles also met the ambassador to Latvia, Addis Lats, Catherine Kirumba Karimu Wahome, the High Commissioner to Kenya, and the Ambassador of Ethiopia, Biruk Mekonnen Demisi. Next up, we have Zara and Mike Tindall, who arrived at the Cheltenham racecourse for day 3 of the events. A lot of these articles posted out that Zara really loves the horses in general, but from the racing side of things, it's always been a massive part of her life, that she is a die-hard race fan, and it's a great profile of the sport to have her in. She loves her role at Cheltenham, and apparently she's hosting people there every day, and she loves it. And it's such a big thing for the world of the Cotswolds, having a good time, enjoying a fantastic sport, and looking after the horses. Because for a lot of people in the Cotswolds, that's their way of life. It exponentially builds that focus, and it's just going forward every day. And I'm glad that she's there. Again, on day 3, another fabulous thing happened when Princess Anne showed up. And we know that she's a former equestrian herself, so we know that this kind of activity is right up her alley. She is as much a big of a fan of these races as her daughter is, and I'm happy to see her. She looks so pretty in that red. I just love it. Now, of course, as I previously stated, they like to host people there, lots of friends at the event, which I think is just wonderful. And some fabulous group pictures came out of Zara and Mike standing around with their friends. I think that's it just makes it more fun. Now, also spotted in the group was Dolly Maud, who is Princess Anne's lady-in-waiting, but also a good friend of Zara's. A big thank you to Remoulade Sauce for showing us what Zara was wearing. Let's move on. And before you know it, it is day 4 of the races, and here comes Zara again, looking absolutely lovely in blue. Gosh, just so pretty. And some more pictures were taken. Now, the next set of pictures kind of caught me because in case you don't recognize the gentleman that is, other than Mike, obviously, who's standing next to Zara, that would be Henry Cavill. For those of you who don't know him, that is him. He was in Superman. He was in The Witcher, and that is him with his partner looking damn sexy. Whew. And then showed up with her husband, Sir Tim Lawrence. But more interestingly enough, as she walked in, on the other side of her, walking with her, was Queen Camilla's first husband, Andrew Parker Bowles. And for those of you who don't know, Anne actually dated him before he married Camilla. So this is a very interesting group. They dated briefly in the 1970s. So their romance apparently was very short-lived, and then he went on to marry Camilla, and that was in the 1960s. Anyway, and the two of them, by the way, divorced in 1995. But anyway, I'm glad that everybody is able to get along, and they're able to hang out together and just enjoy each other's company. I think that's really sweet. Next thing you saw was Princess Anne with the winning owner, J.P. McManus, daughter Sue Ellen, and the Boodles Cheltenham Gold Cup after In the Way You're Thinking won the Gold Cup. A big thank you to Remoulade Sauce for showing us what Zara was wearing. Let's keep going. Next, we have the Duke of Gloucester, who visited the Hymen Food Bank in Nottingham on March 12th. He was there to highlight the organization's community work to tackle food poverty, race, and educational inequality. Let's go back now to Princess Anne, who visited the Royal Navy Sailing Association in Gosport to mark the charity's 90th anniversary. It was also reported that Anne did this visit to acknowledge the contributions of their 5,000-strong community. Let's move on. All right, let's move on back to the Duke of Gloucester, who is the patron of the Construction Youth Trust, and he went to an evening at their Think Differently About Future talent event. Looking good. And also, you should know that Hello Magazine did a Royal Women's Special magazine, but Meghan wasn't in it. All right, next up, we're going to wish a happy birthday to Louis Spencer. He is the Viscount Althorpe. He's turning 31. For those of you who don't know, he is the fourth child of Charles Earl Spencer and his first wife, Victoria Lockwood, which means he's Princess Diana's nephew and first cousin of William and Harry. He's the one that has the three sisters, Lady Kitty, and the twins, Eliza and Amelia. This guy, they're saying, reminds everybody of Harry. I'm sorry, I would find that as an insult. And finally, Prince William gave an interview to The Sun magazine where he revealed that he has an anonymous online persona that he uses to visit van forums. And he also said that he moves his kids around when watching at home to bring the team luck. I never would have thought he's that superstitious, but apparently he is. So William and Catherine get to the stadium, but the first thing they do was stop to meet injured players who were supported by the Welsh Rugby Charitable Trust. Now remember, they're there for the Six Nations match between Wales and England. And remember, one of them is the patron. Each one is the patron of a different one. They both look really happy. Now, when they got to the stadium in Cardiff initially, the two of them met the WRU president, Terry Connor, chairman, Richard Collier-Keywood, and CEO, Abby Turney. They finally made it into the stadium to watch the game. The final score, by the way, was 54-0. I believe that's what the score was. Anyway, I bet you can tell from their faces who won. All right, time to move on. A big thank you to Remoulade Sauce as usual, and let's move on to our Harry-Meghan stuff. We have some major stories, but I just wanted to touch on this. Apparently, Jennifer Aniston, Meghan Markle really wants to be friends with Jennifer Aniston, but Jennifer Aniston is a very smart cookie who wants nothing to do with Meghan Markle. Now, the reason that it's being reported that Meghan wants to be friends with her is because Jennifer Aniston is not just A-list, she's AAA-list, and Meghan is desperate to change the public's perception. Let's be honest, Jennifer Aniston has never put a foot wrong in Hollywood. She is the darling of Hollywood, and since Meghan's already been rejected by Julia Roberts and everybody else that she wants to make nicey-nicey with, having Jennifer Aniston as a friend could help her, supposedly. All right, Meghan announced a podcast. We've all heard about this. It's going to be Confessions of a Female Founder. It's going to launch next month, I believe it is. And a royal expert said that despite the backlash, she's going to keep trying because after all, her Archetypes one was not a success. This one may or may not be, but let's be fair, it doesn't look terribly exciting. And she's just going to keep going until she's going to throw everything at the refrigerator to see what sticks. But let's be honest, we're already in the middle of a lot of problems about this podcast. It came out and all of a sudden, all this stuff started coming out. So the first thing they talked about was this picture. In the picture, Meghan is wearing minimal makeup, no jewelry, and she's pulled her hair back into a ponytail. And they're saying she's trying to go for the more relaxed, approachable vibe. Unfortunately, she's changing her looks so often, it feels very inauthentic. She's trying to go for the female founder look like Gwyneth Paltrow. Less is more, and confidence comes from authenticity rather than glam. The problem is Meghan never comes across as authentic in anything that she does. Now, there's a lot of stuff coming out saying that Meghan is copycatting a lot of stuff. So the first thing I noticed was that she seems to be copycatting. Remember, she's Laminata, another person who's doing a podcast. It's almost the same identical pose. And then Meghan puts out this statement about, I'm excited to share with you something I've been working on, blah, blah, blah. She's having conversations essentially with other women who've started businesses, and she's picking their brains. I feel like this podcast isn't going to do well for several reasons. Number one, you have to be authentic. She's the most inauthentic person that I know of. Number two, I feel like her niche is so small, I don't know who's actually going to be watching this. Number three, we're all very aware that she didn't tape some of her own episodes. She had somebody else tape and they dubbed her in. So my question is, how much of this work is she actually going to do herself? And how much did she fan off to other people? Number four, she spent all of her time taking swipes at the royal family when she did her last podcast, and she did it again during the Netflix show. So do I think this is going to be any different? No, I think she's going to continue to take swipes at the royal family and talk over her guests. Not long after failing on the Netflix show, Meghan now has the idea of doing this podcast, and come to find out, she stole the idea from another woman who has a podcast. It wasn't long before the news got a hold of it. Listen to this.
Meghan is getting back behind the microphone.
Yes, and this is a brand new podcast, so it's not archetypes. Interestingly, there also confessions by Meghan, so she's not going Meghan Sussex, not going Meghan Markle, and she's not going Duchess of Sussex either, which, of course, a lot of people say you can't use that title for commercial purposes. So there's a problem. There's always a problem, right, with Meghan Markle. Well, the problem is someone else has said, I've already using that name. I've got that podcast. And as you see here, she's basically only a year ago was using that title. Have a look.
So excited to kick off today's video, and I want to give you guys a grand welcome to episode 1 of Confessions of a Female Founder.
Interestingly, she didn't pursue that. I mean, she announced it there and said, this is episode 1. We never saw episode 2 or 3. So maybe Meghan felt, well, she's not doing it. She's given up on it. I'm going to take that title.
Now, the woman who she supposedly stole the idea from was very gracious. She said, I can understand why people are drawing connections. I appreciate the support. I understand their intentions. But basically what she said was, this is a coincidence. But for those of you who are saying she didn't steal the podcast and this woman is sticking up for her, let me just let you know that other YouTubers, as you can see, have found that there are other podcasts that are the exact same thing. I mean, the point of the matter is, are there other podcasts that are confessions of a CEO? Yes. But the thing is, Meghan, once again, didn't check anything. She just came up with something. It's like the ARO thing. She doesn't check what she's doing. Now, if you want to have a successful podcast, you need something like this guy. His guests are unbelievable. They're very, very successful Harvard graduates, and they really get into the nitty-gritty of how they became famous. This guy did not talk over them. He let them talk, and he wasn't picking their brain in order to make himself better. Let's be honest, from not being allowed to use Sussex Royal, the bench, which was, described by the New York Times as tortured, Netflix canceled Pearl, she didn't do her due diligence on ARO, I don't think this is going to be any better. It doesn't take a genius to figure out who she's going to have. She's going to have Misha Nunu. She's going to have Bobby Brown from the cosmetics brand. She's going to have Jamie Lima. These are all the people she's going to have. Who Meghan should have had was Bethany Frankel. As a matter of fact, why wasn't she invited to this? It was the Female Founder Collective. They had over 500 female founders there bouncing ideas off of each other. Just amazing. But in the meantime, I can think of a gazillion things and so have a bunch of other fans of things we would rather do than watch that podcast or listen to it. All right, let's move on. Now, if you can believe this, Meghan Markle is quoting Audrey Hepburn. I guess she wants to be compared to Audrey Hepburn. A picture came up on the As Ever lifestyle brand, and she said to plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. And of course, this picture was taken at the same time that these other pictures were taken by People magazine. She can forget it. She's no Audrey Hepburn, who spoke 5 languages: English, Dutch, French, Italian, and Spanish. She was devoted to UNICEF and a children's rights advocate. Yeah, she is no Audrey Hepburn. Let's move on. Oh, here we go. Ashley Biden, Joe Biden's daughter, has been markled. Remember, she got that $250,000 donation to her nonprofit, but the problem is she didn't report it. So a watchdog group has contacted the IRS after the women's wellness space didn't reveal that it had received the money when her father was still president and Harry and Meghan were still nosying up to the Democrats. So the National Legal and Policy Center, which is based in Philadelphia, this place that Ashley Biden has is a trauma-informed wellness center, and it's in clear violation of the reporting rules. And now they want Ashley to be deposed and the IRS to determine what civil and criminal penalties should be appropriate. They're questioning also that according to the 990 forms, Ashley only made $511 a week, or $12.75 an hour, the same as a McDonald's worker. More than likely, that's not true. So they're saying her pay is very low for her education and work experience, and that her hours are actually exaggerated. And since she was engaged in politically related and other activities, including foreign travel with her mother, Joe Biden, the First Lady. When exactly are people going to learn to stay away from Harry and Meghan? All right, let's move on. Next up, I just wanted to touch on this because, birds of a feather. One of Harry's friends, Howard Spooner, is having problems. His business went up and he left owing the taxpayers £600,000. I just don't even know what to make of this. Whew, moving on. Next up, I really wanted to talk about this article because let's face it, Harry had the freedom to explore palaces, every whim met by an army of servants, unlimited toys. But remember, Harry said he had generational trauma, not due to material possessions, but because he claims his emotional needs were not met. And he said the scars were so bad, he would walk away from the only life he ever knew. However, what people are saying, one person in specific, Ingrid Seward, who has spent 40 years following the firm, he said Harry's emotional problems were caused by the fact that Charles was too soft on him. She said had Charles been firmer to some extent, they might not have caused him so much worry. Remember, Harry wrote that he was the shadow, the support. I was brought into the world in case something happened to Willie. I was summoned to provide backup, distraction, diversion, a spare part, a kidney, a speck of bone marrow. But this woman in her recent book, My Mother and I, says, that's not true, but it's how Harry chooses to see himself. And he has allowed this perception to dominate his life to such an extent, he's made a career out of it. He's choosing to be seen as a victim. He has tried to wreak vengeance on his family and the press for all the slights he believes he's suffered, and much of the ire has been directed at William. The Queen on a regular basis used to hear about the antics of both boys. She was not pleased. Now, this woman also claims that on one occasion, Harry climbed onto the grand piano in Sandringham and knocked a vase of flowers onto the floor where it broke. The boys just ran wild because neither parent wanted to take responsibility. Now, let me tell you something. Harry, remember, he was caught using drugs. So what did Charles do? He sent him to rehab for a day. What does that do? Absolutely nothing, which is why Harry still has a drug problem to this day. What they're saying is that instead of formal events, Diana prioritized playtime, scheduled impromptu visits with her sons, and tended more to their emotions. However, she let them basically do more or less what they wanted, which in those days was fashionable, but now look what you've got. The problem is that's why Harry thought he was William's spare, but now he's become Meghan's spare. He has pushed Meghan to the forefront and himself to the rear. This is why he's not really in her shows. He's not really got anything to do with her new lifestyle brand. He's got nothing to do. All right, next up, we have some more people complaining about Meghan Markle. Now, I was on Andy Popcorn Palace the other day. I'll put a link in the description box, but we were talking about this woman because she came out and basically said, and I'm quoting, "I just think there's more to life than how you look and how your friends think of you. I've probably alienated half of my fans." She doesn't care for Meghan. Who does? Another person who's spoken out is Vogue Williams. For those of you who don't know, she's an Irish TV and radio presenter, and her husband is brother-in-law to Pippa. So she has a podcast called My Therapist Ghosted Me. And at one point, she was talking about Meghan's clothing, and she goes, "I can't stand the jumper around the shoulders. It's disgusting," she said. She goes, "I love the idea of being a trade wife. I was dabbling in it. Remember, I made chicken pie a while ago, and I am obsessed with the level of perfection, but I'm like, how is she doing that? I just think that's," and I'm not going to say the B word. She goes, "It's just too sickly sweet." Like I told you guys, it's like the dam has opened. Well, we're going to finish up this video showing you some things from Meghan's fashion, their hats, and they're trying to sell them. Also some memes from Royally Thoughts and Kathy, California, Nevada, and others. Enjoy. FYI, the ones with Harry and the skin are from the bath salts. Want your comments on this one. Make them good. Don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button and the bell for all notifications. Then go down into the description box where you'll find the link to my Twitter, my Gettr, my Rumble, my email, my Amazon wish list, a link to my father's book, and a physical address. For those of you who've donated to my coffee fund, thank you so much. And as always, you guys, have a great day.